I think so. We're good. Let me see. I got Yeti.
I've got to go down here.
Everybody ready? Okay, well, good evening. We will call to order the meeting for the Shenandoah City Council, Wednesday, July 11th, 7 p.m. Call the roll and notice that everybody is here with the exception of Council Member Mike McLeod, who did let us know that he would be absent. If y'all would like, we'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you'd like to stay standing with me, I'll say a quick invocation for us. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor
the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Lord, once again, we come before you tonight as a community to say thank you. Thank you for your grace and for your love. Please allow us to consider the matters at hand, using the wisdom that you give us. Think about our neighbors, think about our families, think about trying to do what we know helps everybody, makes us all better. Even when we don't agree, hopefully we can disagree professionally, respectfully, and show each other the grace and love that you've taught us to. We pray these things in your Son's name, and all God's people said,
Amen.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming tonight. Didn't get a lot of people signed up to speak, but we did have one. Former council member Darrell Frazier. Mr. Frazier, if you approach the podium. Good evening, sir.
Council, good evening to you. Darrell Frazier, 2930 Enchanted Drive. I listened to the March 28th council meeting after reading the article this morning on the Airbnbs that the villager wrote, and I want to say that I definitely appreciate some of y'all's comments. Mike, who's not here, I was going to thank him for the research that he did and bringing the Airbnbs up to the forefront. Ron, also, I wholeheartely agree with your statements. You said you would not want a short-term rental next to you. Amen to that. While we served on council together, we didn't see some things eye to eye on several issues, but I totally support your thoughts and stance on this. Having a turnover of people in the house behind me, and that is located in front of some of my other neighbors, it's getting ridiculous. Sometimes weekly, sometimes nightly. And actually, to me, this is a zoning issue. and an IDC issue, not a police issue. Your city attorney stated that he and your IDC staff expert, Jackie, who definitely agrees, the expert on this, agree that Airbnbs are not permitted in the residential area. And Mayor, you agreed that it was an unregulated hotel, basically. But you nor Councilmember Beavers wanted to overregulate the residents. I get that. But how are you overregulating if the rule is already there and has been there since April of 2011? Airbnb stands for Air Bed and Breakfast. It's a lodging reservation website. Travelers pay a guest fee on top of the reservation, and the definition goes on from there. But how much clearer can it be that this is a hotel? R1 zoning, which all of us live in, is defined as single-family residential designed for one family. The last occupant in the house behind me, they were renters, and they were there for well over a year. We had a mutual respect for each other, and as most neighbors do, we got along great. They were great people, and that's what community is all about, is getting along with each other and watching out for each other, for that matter. My neighbors and I would ask that you enforce the IDC and keep our residential community as a residential community without short-term rentals. Thank you all for listening. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Darryl.
you, Darryl.
Thank you, Darryl. Okay, well, I think that was the only person I had sign up, but as y'all know, we will have a second citizens forum, so if you'd like to speak at the second citizens forum at the end of the meeting, you're more than welcome to. So we will move into item 6 then, which is, item 6 has been canceled. That was the presentation that was going to be by Randy Johnson from the Montgomery County Hospital District, and unfortunately that presentation was canceled. We got word from the hospital district earlier in the week, so we'll move to item 7, which is in fact the topic we just talked about, which is presentation of report regarding short-term rental homes in Shenandoah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We were asked to do a 90-day study on the short-term rentals, the Airbnbs, and we identified 4 of them here in the valley, in the city limits. Our study went for 90 days, April 9th through June 25th. During that time, we only had 1 call for service that was documented through our CAD system, our computerized assisted dispatch, and it was the Pine Hill Drive residents. Other than that, that was the only issue we had with those through the 90 days. There was no code violations documented in eGov. And I know there's been other people saying there was more than that, but right now that's the only 4 we identified at this time.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody got any questions for Chief?
I do. So we only looked at the last 90 days, or how far back did we go beyond 90 days?
We were asked to do the 90-day study starting on.
So we don't know what the figures were over the past year or so, 2 years maybe?
No, sir. We just asked to do the 90-day study. We did it from.
I mean, I would want to continue to take a look at it. I looked at some of the properties that were listed here, and one of them was owned by, sounds good if you're from Wisconsin, Cheese Castle LLC. But I know that Cheese Castle, the owners of that LLC have at least 6, don't quote me, up to 8 different properties in Shenandoah Valley. And if the waters felt good to them with an Airbnb, one LLC could put a whole lot of burden on us. So I just like to keep on studying this as well, just to make sure that we don't have, and as well as the ones that we showed up here, do those owners also own multiple? Cheese Castle just happened to stick in my head when I was looking through properties a couple years back, but.
We were looking up on the websites, the houses that we could identify that were here from pictures and from the locations that were listed on those two websites. And then we went through MCAT also.
Yeah, and maybe just looking at those property owners to see if they perhaps own multiple properties in the city. If we could do that.
We can look it up.
That's all I have.
Anybody else?
Well, I noticed on them, there's no homestead exemption. And although I agree with Daryl and I'm concerned about this thing, I'm also concerned about property rights. That's that gray area that we're dealing with right here. So I think we need to, rather than just take an iron fist and say you can't do it because of the EDC, I think it lends to have more discussions, obviously, and move forward from there.
Chief, could you incorporate in y'all's research maybe what some of the other cities, what their ordinances are? I know we talked about Austin. You know,
We do have that ordinance.
what's that?
We do have that
Well, I know we
ordinance.
have, yeah, I know we have Austin,
provide it, yeah.
but I just wondered, can we get a bigger sample size maybe? And, you know, Bill, maybe even, is there any, do we know of any cases so far?
Well, I was waiting to speak. At the end of May, the Texas Supreme Court issued an opinion on a deed restriction case. So let's distinguish. It was not an ordinance, it was a deed restriction. The Texas Supreme Court said that if the deed restrictions allow you to rent property within the area, there is no distinction between 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, etc. That as a matter of law, the deed restrictions that say you can rent your property allow you to rent on a short-term basis. Again, that is a deed restriction case, not an ordinance case. But I think it's going to require further thought and examination as to if the Supreme Court feels that way about deed restrictions. If we had an ordinance, if you can rent your property, whether or not we can restrict it or not, I don't know the answer.
Many cities, I've contacted TML, they're all doing it. And close to here, the Woodlands Township is all over it right now.
And I fully anticipate that matter will be litigated because
I just
it's
want our ducks in a row. is
right.
What I want.
Agreed. Okay, thank you, Bill and Chief. Anybody else? Okay, I'm gonna move up item 9, which is discussion and possible action regarding an agreement with T-Mobile. We have some guests here from T-Mobile, and so I want to move that item up.
Go ahead and do a quick background on this. This is a proposed agreement between the City of Shenandoah and T-Mobile, which stipulates that T-Mobile can lease 150 square foot of space on the interior of our tower on the second floor for antenna equipment, and then also space for 6 antennae on the top of our tower. They will pay $25,000 per year to lease the space. This has been brought before council before. The latest time it was brought before council, there were concerns mentioned by council of getting language in the contract to limit the size, color, and quantity of the antenna, and also a design of what it's going to look like. That language was added to the agreement that the tenant may install up to 6 antennae on the premise, each which shall not exceed 10 feet in length and 3 feet in width. The external colors of the antenna shall be painted to match the color of the exterior of the water tower. So that language is added, and the design plans were added as well to the background.
Thank you, Joseph.
Make a motion we approve.
Second?
So we have a motion by Mayor Pro Temp to approve. We have a second by Councilman Raymaker. Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, Bill, have you read this agreement? And do you
Yes.
have any?
No, we're good, we're good, yes.
Any other discussion? I have one question, I guess. How did we come up with the number 25,000 per year?
So that number was a discussion between T-Mobile and the city that we came to an agreement on.
We checked with several other cities, and the prices were comparable with the ones that we checked with.
I had one of our other vendors approach me after hearing us talk about this at a council meeting and said, you guys are way under going rate. And so, which I, have no frame of reference, and that particular person had no dog in the fight to come up and tell me that, but he said these are, going rate on this is typically somewhere around 5,000 a month. So, which would be 60,000 a year. And I had no way to dispute it. I just said, really? He said, yeah, you need to do your homework on that and check and see. He said, you may be getting undercut a little bit. So I guess my question is, do we feel, I didn't do any of this research. I went strictly off of what, you guys told us, and I'm happy to do so. Y'all are the day-to-day experts.
Well, that research is almost a year old. This has been going on a long time. So I don't know what the current rate is.
Well, I just wonder if we ought not, I don't want to necessarily pump the brakes too hard on this, but I almost wonder if maybe we ought not enter into a shorter term contract so that we can do a little bit more research and see, okay, do we need to be more in line with the market on this? Unless you feel, comfortable that we are, and then, or council feels comfortable that we are.
Was, as Bill said, we have been working on this for a while, so that is a possibility that going rate could have gone up from when we started these discussions over a year ago.
On the issue of term, we negotiated that back and forth with T-Mobile. I believe originally they wanted 10 years, and I think it's now 5, and they just said below that was not economical for them to sign a 1-year deal, and in 1 year we say get out, that the cost was too high to install them and then uninstall. That was the discussion that was had on that issue. But I can tell you it's been at least a year since we looked at comparable
Yeah, I want to say that we
cost.
cut back on, I want to say it was closer to 25 years they were asking for.
It was a long time. Yes.
Right.
So after
The term we did
so
shorten.
After 5 years, we would be able to raise the rate, correct?
Correct.
I might be more comfortable if I knew what something going rate was, because I know that hadn't been presented to me.
Councilman, with T-Mobile, I'm happy to address it.
Sure, absolutely.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
come on up.
I was just gonna ask if there was a representative.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt
It's all
the
right.
discussion, but Mike Crane, I represent T-Mobile. We've been working on this for actually a little over a year now, and as far as the rates, typically those are confidential, that other jurisdictions would be paid, but I know 60,000, 5,000 a month would absolutely not fly with T-Mobile. I represent other wireless companies as well, and the going rate is very comparable to what any other jurisdictions I've done. I've done this for over 20 years. So it is something where, some might get a little higher, some might get a little bit lower, but the average is right around 25,000 per year.
So what's your high and what's your low?
We have offered a very fair number.
No, I don't mean with us. I mean in terms of what you've seen out there in the market.
I don't know, honestly don't know. I've seen others 3,000 a month, but I'm sure there's some higher, but I've also seen some at, 1,000 a month. So, but I could say 5,000 a month, I mean, they would kill the site before they would do that. And they would also kill the site if it were, you know, a one-year lease, even though I think there's the option to cancel the lease. There's a lot of money invested, putting the antennas,
Sure.
the infrastructure, running fiber to it, et cetera.
That makes sense.
What's the typical term of other jurisdictions?
The standard term of the lease is 25 years, and it's broken into five-year terms. And it's usually only cancelable by the tenant, you know, T-Mobile in this case. Because again, if, let's say they were to build a new tower, obviously a lot more infrastructure, you know, that's a lot of money to invest, to have it canceled or renegotiated in 5 years. So,
If that's true, then certainly market, we should be cheaper if we have a
Shorter,
cancelable
sure,
term.
shorter term. No question.
So this is 5 years and we have to renew it every 5 years, okay.
that's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilman Brought to approve. We have a second by Councilman Raymaker to approve. Do we have any more discussion?
Joseph, do you think this is a fair deal?
Yes, it is.
Will the proceeds go to the enterprise fund or general fund, Lisa?
Yeah, I believe my general recommendation was that these monies should go to improve the water tower and the water system in particular.
That's where I'd like it to go.
Makes sense.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. I'm going to also move up item 10, which is discussion and possible action to adopt the following ordinance. An ordinance of the City of Shenandoah, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances as stated in your agenda packet. Do I have a motion?
I'd motion to approve.
Second.
So I have a motion by Councilman Fletcher to approve. I have a second by Councilman Raymaker. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We move up item 11, which is discussion and possible action to adopt the following ordinance. Ordinance of the City of Shenandoah, Texas, as stated in your agenda packet for residential wind speed. Do I have a motion?
I'd motion that we approve the wind speeds.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Fletcher to approve. I have a second by Councilman Raymaker. Do we have any discussion?
I don't. I do. I don't like the language in the ordinance. It talks about sprinkler systems. If you read it, doesn't tell you.
Well, what we did, we had to adjust the ordinance to fit. If you look at what we're doing is amending, I believe it's 1433, adding whatever it is, a B, can't remember.
Section 8, under Section 1, line A talks about the building, fire, and other codes adopted by a city and all building, except those
Yeah,
as specifically listed below, and shall be required to install a fire sprinkler system in accordance with the most current edition of the NFPA 13. Then it goes on to say, it talks about fireproof walls and everything. None of that is wind speed. So I would say, I'd be no on this one myself,
okay.
until we got the language right.
No, that is the current, what I'm trying to say is, actually, I see there's a mistake. It should say B is a wind speed of 126. In other words, to fit in our ordinance, I'm just repeating that current, what is 1433, that is your current ordinance, adding subpart B. In other words, your subpart A is what already exists.
It already exists.
Right, yeah.
Right.
All right.
B, but I see right here, it says 110. In B, it should say 126.
No 110s.
No, we're dropping it down to 1.
Oh, we were dropping it to 110. Yeah, right, that's correct.
It does say.
Yeah. So that first part is what just already exists.
All right. I did.
Thank
you for the
It's a fair
clarification.
question.
Okay, so do we have any more discussion? So we have a motion to approve by Councilman Fletcher. We have a second by Councilman Raymaker. If no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 12, discussion and possible action to adopt the following resolution. A resolution of the City of Shenandoah, Texas, providing for the policy to allow homeowners the ability to be issued residential plumbing, mechanical, and electrical permits.
I move that we approve the resolution.
Have a motion by Councilman Fletcher. Have a second by Councilman Raymaker. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 13, approve the minutes of the May 9th, 2018 regular meeting and the May 16th, 2018 special meeting.
I move they be approved as read.
Have a motion by Councilman Brought to approve the minutes. Have a second by Councilman Fletcher. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. With that, we will circle back to item 8, which is discussion regarding the 2018-2019 budget and request for information related to the budget. This is a discussion-only item.
Mayor and council, so for the funnest part of your night, let's dive into this budget. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask any of the department heads that are here. If there's any information that we need to research, we'll research it at that time and then bring it back to the next meeting. I'll have a memo created for you guys.
Well, Lisa, another brilliant job of consolidating the document. It's much more streamlined and easy to read this year.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Go for it.
So we had a incredible increase in taxable value in properties. I would like to know basically what tax rate we would need to adopt to ensure that there's no additional property tax in terms of dollars from properties that existed last year or this current year.
So that is a preliminary value. That's before any protests take place. So the rule of thumb is kind of 10 to 15% will probably decrease. I think a lot of it, which I'm waiting for the official tax roll, then I can get a better idea of where that huge increase came from. But when we get our tax rates on the 25th, the effective tax rate will be the rate that you want to adopt to keep the same level of income.
Properties,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, yeah, but the tax assessor has until the 25th to provide those rolls. So I have not gotten them yet. But once I get them, I'll probably get them the day of the next meeting, and I'll make sure that I let you guys know.
So when you get them, will you be able to distinguish the increase in value from existing properties versus new properties?
I'm pretty sure it breaks it down, yeah. If not, Tammy Beret, she's pretty good at answering any questions that we have, so.
I'd really appreciate being able to see that.
Yeah, no problem.
Anybody else? Mr. Raymaker?
Yeah, I'm looking at the capital projects. I had one question on that. It might have been something that we might have been able to defer, but with the hospital district being involved now, I don't think that we can defer that one, so it's not really, it's moot as far as I was concerned right now. But the Laserfish project, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Is this going to expose any information that's either PII, personal identifiable information,
Well,
anything that's credit information? And would it expose any potential for health information?
Great question, Ron. Well, Laserfish, if you may or may not, we already use, that's the city's official record retention system. The version we're on is an aging version. So the capital request is to pay for the upgrade to the new, it's not really an upgrade, it's a whole new platform. So what they're essentially doing is going to bring us up to the new product. And that opens the door for us to be able to turn some of our internal Laserfish repositories to the website if we chose to do that. It's not a requirement, it's just it's kind of a gateway that they offer using a product called WebLink. So, we're already putting documents, already putting information in the Laserfish. We can just make that available through the website to the public, what we choose. What they're doing is they're giving us credit for our existing product. Obviously, the new product is much more expensive. That's for the figure that you have in front of you there. But they'll credit us back for a large portion of our support that we're going to pay, and then for the product itself. So, which we've already budgeted for. So we're kind of paying for the support plus that, but they'll credit that back to us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and do we get any credit? Did we already have licenses for SQL Server?
Yes, we already have the licenses for that we need. So
that's not an addition.
It's not an addition. This is just for the Laserfish platform upgrade. And I just want to note there that one of the drivers behind doing this was to give us the ability to integrate encode with Laserfish, which would be beneficial, makes it much more efficient. Encode has their own document management system, but it's kind of like you're doubling the work. This would be a one-stop shop for most of our public record. So we can integrate that into encode. Without that, we really can't do that. That's not a must. It's just something that would be, an enhancement to encode. And that's the main driver behind going ahead and doing this platform upgrade.
And then as long as we're upgrading, I like the foresight that you put into this, that as long as we're upgrading the website, that this would also meld into that as well.
Absolutely.
So you get a brilliant as well for that
Yeah.
one.
Well, there was effort on several of our parts, but yes, it dovetails right into the website.
That's right. I can't forget Debbie.
Absolutely not.
I didn't see any figures anywhere for ongoing budget for Gail Merriweather to work on any ongoing issues that we might have, whatever they may be, pay scale, and perhaps looking at the policy manual if we had any dollars in the budget there.
I should have those this week. She's
Okay.
working on that. So that'll be provided to y'all as soon as we have it.
I guess my next question was on the capital project for the fuel storage tank relocation. And I was just curious, did the water tank ever get close to being underwater during Harvey?
It was,
It was the wastewater treatment plant that
Okay, yeah.
flooded.
but the fuel tanks were inaccessible because of flooding.
Right. They're both stored on the wastewater treatment plant facility area, and it was underwater, reachable only by high-profile vehicles.
What's the floodplain at that location? I know that was historic rain, but what's the floodplain rated there?
I don't have that number offhand, but I can tell you that if we get a heavy rain, that water treatment plant takes on water. It's low,
That's pretty typical.
yes.
So you generally install sewer plants at the low point. So it makes sense that it's at the low point.
Right. Your
Gravity-
collection
gravity
system is a
helps.
gravity
I learn
system.
something every day, right?
It's cheaper that way.
And for the record, we are pursuing some funding to alleviate some of the cost of relocating these tanks. It's through the state, is that correct? It was
through
not
FEMA.
available through FEMA, but it's a proactive step.
And I had one more question on that one, which was, we mentioned bulk first going to Valero. Do we know what that dollar saving would be that would make this a little bit more palatable as well?
I don't know that off the top of my head. Do y'all know?
Last time I think we paid $232 from a gallon from when we bought it in bulk.
So if somebody could get me a run rate for a year, what that difference would be if we were fueling up there all the time.
Okay.
They're also used for emergency management reasons, so like during Harvey, when some of the gas stations ran out of fuel, that's what we would kind of default to for patrol vehicles as well.
Well, if we got to move the fuel tanks, what we would try to do is use those on a permanent basis, Public Works and the Police Department. And then Valero would be as a emergency measure if something happened to our fuel tank here, we'd use Valero as our backup. Because that way I think we'd save a lot more money using the bulk rate fuel.
And where would these be relocated to then?
The Public Works building on the west side.
And I'll clarify, an emergency would be, you know, if the pump went down, not if there's a hurricane. You know.
Right.
We'd have them filled up before the hurricane struck.
Joseph, have you thought through trash bash with these, if these tanks are relocated?
Yeah, that was a big concern just because that is a spot where we put a dumpster. We did look at putting in a concrete pad on the grass, but that just added cost to it. But we should be able to manage with trash bash even with them located on the existing concrete.
For the pool vehicle, the police pool vehicle, I'm wondering about how much that vehicle actually gets used. And I know that we have a policy that says that folks can't use their own cars to go run short errands. So rather than buying a different car, if we perhaps should change the policy so that people could drive cars that they're already comfortable driving to do their local errands. And if they have to go far, they can always put in for a mileage reimbursement.
We would need to modify the policy as it stands now.
So I guess I haven't seen the policy right off, so if we could have that ready for the workshop.
All right.
I guess my other questions are around vehicle replacement policy. How many years are we actually keeping vehicles running? What's our recommendation? I thought we were at 4 years now.
Or are you talking about patrol vehicles, or are you talking about
Well, patrol vehicles.
or admin vehicles? Admin vehicles, they came up with a checkoff list that you have to fill in the blanks and see how much maintenance it has, how often the vehicle's down, so it has to go through a certain process to see if it's replaceable or not. As far as the patrol vehicles, they're on a 4-year replacement. So we're still replacing right now. This year we're replacing 2012s and 2013s.
I know a couple years ago you would have thought it was heresy when we switched it from 3 years to 4, and I'd like to propose that we bump it up another year and let's see how it goes.
Well, that's what we were doing. We were doing 2 vehicles at a time, and that's why we're doing 2012s and 2013s this year, because there's a lot of maintenance involved with the older vehicles. So we've turned those into vehicles that aren't in the standard rotation as much, trying to save wear and tear on them.
I'm still kind of curious to see how they would go on the 5th year. I don't know if anybody else has any interest as well. Any place that we can save some money, I'm all for that.
Well, my question is, a vehicle that you're retiring, take the one with the ants in it or whatever, that vehicle has an actual cash value. Do we apply that to the purchase of the new vehicle, like you would if you traded it in, or are we auctioning them off, or are we going through eBay, or what are we doing?
Like a trade-in.
You want to know what we do with the money when we get it for the vehicle?
Well, and, right, you're gonna replace the Tahoe, I think not Tahoe, the Impala.
The pool car.
Right, I mean, how does that
The
bring
Caprice?
apply, Chief, is all I'm asking.
Yeah, the Caprice, we paid 16 for it. We'll probably get close to that when we sell it. And as far as the money, I guess the money goes,
It's a proceed from capital assets. So it just goes into your general fund revenue.
So that's at projected 45,000? as part of that, or
Well, that's just the Tahoes.
that's just the top?
'Cause they
so
sell-
that's what I'm
yeah.
saying. So there, would that be the same line item, the same control number? So if this vehicle, and my question too, if it's invaded with ants, how long did it sit there not being used?
Which vehicle?
Talking about the gold Malibu, the
The
pool
gold-
car.
The ant-infested
Yeah.
one.
Oh, it still gets used. They just
Yeah.
deal with it.
There's been a lot of maintenance costs because of the ants and other things.
I'm okay with getting rid of it, I just don't want to replace it. We can change the policy.
I mean, everybody uses, it's not just the police department. The pool vehicles are used by the whole city. So if somebody goes to training, that's what they take, and instead of taking a personal vehicle and paying mileage.
Understood, we would change that with the policy change.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's, I didn't know if you.
Could change that with the policy change.
Okay.
And that's all I had for today.
Councilman Fletcher?
I got a couple of questions. First one's based on pay scale adjustments. So I know we were in the budget already is the transition to a 15-year scale. So I guess the first question is, I know that we're down a couple of employees right now. One in the police department, I think one in, are you down, Joseph? One or two?
Yeah, we're down. We did just offer the position up, but we were down for about 7 months for a field service rep.
And we
I
just
know-
started a new officer as well, so we should be, those two positions are filled now.
So that we
You're
have a
new.
new police
He
officer
started
now?
Monday.
He started Monday, okay, perfect. I know concern was around recruitment, so in looking at the pay scale adjustments, if we eliminate the first 3 years, is that reflected in the budget currently, or is that just an option we're looking at?
That's an option, yeah.
Okay, so if we do that, how does that affect current employees?
So the idea is if you remove those first 3 years, essentially year 4 becomes the new year 1, and then you top out at year 15. So basically it's a 3-year bump for existing staff. So if you were a year 1, you're the new year 1, which is the old year 4, if that makes any sense.
So we're going to bump up everybody because entry-level pay is too low?
Well, there's a bump to keep that consistent. If you did remove the first 3 years, because when you look at, there's going to have to be a bump because the person that was hired at entry level can't stay at that low rate if you cut the first 3 years. Because you could potentially, you hire somebody new, they could be being paid more than the person you hired 2 years ago.
Happens to me in contracting every day. Editorial comment. All right, never mind, go ahead.
So I guess in looking at the different alternatives, and I understand a lot of it has to do with cost of living increases that weren't applied through the years.
That's correct.
So we're kind of on the catch up, and that's why we're dealing with the issues. So basically, in looking at the different alternatives, alternative 3, the $161,818, that would be the shortfall that we would make up. Is that correct?
That's the cost for the increased salary wages to get rid of those 3 years.
So, but that's the additional cost on top of what we already have in the budget, correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Yes.
Just want to make sure everybody understands that. That's, we already have X amount in the budget for the compression. This would be because we're moving the compression forward 3 years.
Right. Rather than compressing from 18 to 15, where your year 1 stays the same and the top stays the same. It's leaving the top the same, but bumping up that starting pay to a more competitive level.
And that particular option would in one sweep, would resolve the COLA deficit that's been happening for a while. The scale was stagnant.
Well, how did that happen with where the scale stayed stagnant for so long? What led to that?
COLA was not applied to the scale. It was paid in twice in a lump sum amount, so the scale was never modified year by year. It just stayed the
So
same.
you're saying that because the cost of living adjustments have been deferred for all these years, that's why we're getting hit today?
That this would accomplish that.
This would make us current.
Right.
Right, if you looked at the data I pulled from the Social Security Administration, and I just looked at the last decade, it shows an increase. Basically, we're a variance of negative 15.9%. But that's just COLA. And something else we looked at was, what's the actual cost of labor by looking at our competitors and what they're offering for different positions. And it lined up that we're behind in the cost of labor as well, which makes sense.
How many years did we not do the COLA adjustment?
Is it 8?
I missed the question.
How many years did we not do a COLA adjustment?
So we had one COLA adjustment in the last decade. There was the two payouts, which isn't really a COLA adjustment because it doesn't adjust the scale. It's
You're saying 8
more of a
once in a
payout.
decade and not any in the last 8?
Correct. Well, there was one, sorry, that's not correct. We had one in 2013. For 3%.
So again, just to clarify, if we looked at option or alternative 3 that was presented, so 161,818.92, that would be the shortfall at this point to bring everybody.
Yes. Yes.
And then in the budget currently is all new staff members or not yet?
I'm sorry?
Are all staff members represented in the budget, or are we still needing additional?
Well, it's the position count. So if there's a vacant position such as a police officer, that's going to be that position. And then the police department is proposing adding officers in the next fiscal year.
Let me understand one more thing.
So hold on a minute before you go
Sorry.
to that. So then my question would be, back to the alternative 3, the 161, that would be inclusive in the 161 as those positions.
Correct. That you've got those two. Yeah. Yes, sir. That's correct.
Go ahead, Ron, ask your question.
So if we had been doing the COLA all along, would this adjustment that we're having to make with the bottom 3 bands still be necessary, or would that have been taken care of if we had done the COLA all along?
It would have been taken care of.
All right, thanks.
When staff looked at this one, there were several goals, and one of the goals that we haven't talked about is, if you remember in our previous salary surveys, what you saw was an increase of the starting pay getting less and less competitive, whereas the top out was remaining competitive. So another advantage of cutting off the first 3 years is you're keeping the top the same. If you did a COLA adjustment, an actual COLA adjustment, that adjusts every year up a certain percentage. But staff saw that the top needed to stay the same. So by cutting off 3 years, you achieve that goal. And it just improves the entry level, that first year starting pay.
And then administratively, I know that we were looking at some point in adding additional staff. Was that included in the budget? I don't know that I saw that.
We currently have the budgeted position of the executive assistant. So we could fill, we had talked about a records clerk. So we could fill that position now using those funds because we have a surplus. We also have some movement where Jackie left admin, is now in the development,
Right.
you know, that sort of thing. But we're looking at adding a person that instead of an executive assistant, we're looking at a combination records clerk, admin assistant for the administration department.
And are we currently out for that now? Is that job posted?
Not yet. I do have the job description for Bill's review this week,
Okay.
and then we're going to go out to post.
And I would commend all department heads, I mean, to make the adjustments that you've made during the last year and all the changes that have took place, and to cut your budgets with staff that weren't necessarily needed. I think you guys have done a great job in bringing forth your departments and again, providing greater production than even when we had more people. Everybody seems to be working very well together.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want anybody on staff to think that, you know, you're delivering the bad news to us. But if this stuff had been taken care of all along, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. So, thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Do we have an idea of how long Gail Merriweather would take to do a salary survey?
We've actually talked to her about that. We wanted to try to do it this year. There just isn't enough time. But I asked her to take a look at what her fee might be to do it in the next year. And, you know, she's supposed to be getting that number to me as well.
I'm more concerned about the duration of time.
I'm
And
not
that,
sure.
I'd hate to make a drastic change that she would then make a recommendation that we would undo some of that change.
And I had thought about that as well. What I don't know is the impact to the budget of what her recommendation might be. It's hard to predict that. So, but I can tell you that a couple of things that she pointed out is that the increments in the steps, ours are averaging 2%, and she's saying it should be about 3.5. You know, and that's, I'm sure it's based on an average that she is aware of. They surveyed a lot of cities. She also pointed out the cost of attrition. So when we lose an employee for whatever reason, there's a workload burden that falls to the others. Then that means, you know, other tasks they may be postponed and not gotten to. Then there's that cost that you hire the new person and you train them. So there's a cost associated with the attrition, and it's not just the initial recruiting on the low end.
Right.
So we're trying to look at the full scope, but I do not know the answer to that. How much potential undoing might occur.
Can you ask her how long it will take? So I'm wondering if we could kick her off early.
Yeah,
Fund her in this
I've asked her
current
to
budget.
include that timeline too.
Okay, thanks.
Have we heard anything back from our IMO guy with the CBB?
We're expecting something this week.
Okay.
In fact, I emailed him this week, and he's had a couple questions he got with Debbie on. So he's this week next, if we overlap into the next week, but this month, yeah.
I only asked because he had mentioned to me by the 4th, and it's now the 11th, so.
I expect it soon.
Is that all, Councilman Fletcher?
So far.
Okay. Councilman Beavers?
I've asked my only planned question.
Councilman Brock?
Well, I've talked to Lisa during the week on minus codification of the ordinances. They've gone out for a quote on that, so that's in the process coming up. So I'm in good shape. Now, I don't know about going into the IDC and reworking it with P&Z. I don't know if we've got enough to do that in this budget or not.
I do have a preliminary number for the IDC, and it's pretty loose right now until they really get into it.
I
But
understand. Have you talked to Freeze and Nichols, or
I
you
have.
have? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
they're proposing initially $138,000 in a 12 to 14 month timeline. So
Right,
we knew it would
tweak
be.
it? I don't think so.
We knew it would be a
Oh, I
bigger
understand.
project. So
But
And that's
Right.
without
We'll
them
keep them
knowing.
in line, right.
Correct. That's without them knowing exactly what needs to be, updated.
I thought Bill's replacement attorney gave us a great number last time she was here. If I remember correct, it was about 25% of that number.
We might get her to come back.
Getting back to the COLA pay scale adjustments and Joseph's thing here, in 2010, they went from 16 years to 20, and now we're cutting it back down. And I may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I don't understand why we're doing this. I mean,
I was not involved
Seems to be we're making a
in,
moving target on it.
I was not involved in that process, so I'm not sure what the rationale, I don't know if you have
And I
any
don't know
background.
either.
Just the background I have, I was a patrol officer at the time. But that change was made, and actually going from a 16-year to a 20-year max scale is a detriment as far as pay. I remember my pay got frozen for a year or two because on the old scale, I was making, when you're getting step raises compared to a 16-year, it's a little faster than to a 20. So I was told I was being overpaid, and my pay was frozen for a couple of years until it matched the new scale. I don't know what instigated that. I think at that time there was a lot of trimming going on as far as staff and costs and things like
And
that.
I don't know either. I mean, I'm just curious. I'm just trying to figure out the rationale. I'm done.
I'm not sure that the rationale was rational.
Okay, anybody got anything else?
One more question. If I remember correctly, the Sharks were going to propose something to us in terms of a change in lease. Have we seen anything on that?
I have not seen anything yet.
No, so I just put that in there to placehold.
Is that the
If it
existing?
changes, it changes, but,
Can we give them a nudge?
yeah, I can reach out to, the contact that I have.
I think Mike would be happy to.
Yeah, that's, wrong guys, not here. I still would be curious to see that list of outstanding quote-unquote budgeted projects that we've earmarked money for that, we may or may not ever do in the future, and, how we may want to go back and clean those up so that we actually know what is in our, if we want to call them reserves, which I know you hate that term, but
Yeah.
so we know what we have. It's a term everybody
you're
understands.
fine.
It's what everybody understands. So we know what our true reserves are. There may be some project to, build a Shenandoah space shuttle on there that we'll never,
So
I
I
mean,
had started.
we just need to clean.
Shenandoah, you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. We just need to clean. I think it wouldn't hurt to clean some of that up. So
I had started to go as far as back as I could. I didn't get hired until 2014, at the end of the budget year. So it's a lot of historical digging for me. So I'm working on it.
Thank you.
In the past couple of years, I know what those are. I just don't know. I think I was going to do it until 2010. I was going to try to do it from 2010 to now. Before that,
that's-
it's very hard to kind of figure out because we switch accounting systems. So
I think that's an important number to look at, because if we look at how much money we're talking about dipping into reserves, I mean, we're gonna have to make some tough decisions. We're somewhere north of $1 million just out of general fund reserves, and then we're gonna ask MDD for another $1 million that we may or may not get from them. So we've got a lot of money that we're looking to go to the bank and withdraw. And I think it would be important
yeah.
to know what we really have in terms of usable cash.
It's a lot of, especially because we converted accounting systems. So trying to back into it and try to figure out.
Sure.
Well, I mean, surely we can go as far back as you can and then declare
Yeah.
any project older than that hasn't been done. It's dead until it comes back. and
Yeah,
it's
because the pricing is going to be way different most likely.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, no problem. I'll bring that to the next meeting. I'll
Awesome,
try to
thank
get
you.
that done. No
I
problem.
know that's a lot of work, but I appreciate it. I get nervous when I start seeing those kind of price tags. Anybody else got anything else? Okay, well, I appreciate all the time and effort and research staff has done, and I appreciate the fact that council has done a good job, it looks like, at getting prepared for this upcoming budget workshop. We've got some tough decisions to make, so I know we're all going to come to the table well prepared. Okay, so with that, we will move into item 14, which is our citizens forum, which I didn't have anybody sign up to speak. No? Okay. Well, then we will move to item 15, which is council inquiry. And we'll start with the Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I had a very interesting meeting, and you've all got her card here with Pamela Anderson with the Texas Association for Convention and Visitors Bureau. It was a very good meeting, about 2 hours long. Grace was there, Jacobson, and I didn't get her name from Courtyard, so we had some hotel representatives there. I think it's going to be a very favorable relationship going forward. They've got a lot of power to help us in the sporting thing where we could get volleyball and other things, other lesser things rather than NCAA that would put heads in beds. It's going to bring a lot more ideas. Stephanie was pumped up, and I certainly was. So I just want to let you know that was a very productive meeting. This is her contact information, so put it in your Rolodex or whatever. That's all I've got.
Councilman Beavers?
No inquiry.
Councilman Fletcher?
I'm good.
Councilman Raymaker?
Yeah, I had a question about the mold in the Public Works building and how we ended up in that situation. I read your email, but there seemed like historically that building was being kept at improper temperatures.
I can go ahead and answer that.
Please do.
So after the fire department left, the temperature set at a higher temperature since it was an unused space. There was some condensation and things that were in the building as it mixed between the cold side of the building and the hot side of the building, and it seemed to have caused some mold issues, which we're currently working on abating.
And this is just kind of the early part of we don't know what's behind the walls yet.
Well, we do. We had an abatement team come in, take a look at the mold. None of it's hazardous. It's more of an annoyance, and we've got pricing to get it remediated.
Okay, all right. All right, that's it.
Well, I would like to say that if you didn't get a chance to come out to our Independence Day Parade on the 30th, you missed a really fun time. We had a great time. There ended up being, Miss Debbie, 151 people. Is that right?
I counted 127, but that was in the middle of it. So there were people who had been there and left and people coming in. So
I like my number better.
I think 100.
Yeah, if I'm going to exaggerate a number, don't ever,
Go with it.
roll with me here.
Not even.
Yeah. 160, 170, whatever it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Kids had a blast. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the Civic Club throwing that together in, whatever it was, 3 weeks or something. And put it on your calendar for next year. Make sure you're there. We got a whole year to plan for it now, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And I tell you what made me really happy about it is when I was sad about the fact that I woke up on the morning of 4th of July and it was raining, I thought, well, you know what? At least we already had our parade, and so our kids got to enjoy an Independence Day parade. So there you go. I think that was a worthwhile endeavor, and I'm glad we did it. I really appreciate the staff and the Civic Club and all the work y'all put into it, and I can't wait. I'm looking forward to next year and get to do it again. So any ideas that you could come up with for community involvement, I'm all ears. So who knows, maybe we have a Labor Day parade next or something. I don't know. We'll do something to keep everybody in the loop. But other than that, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate all the hard work that y'all are putting into this budget, and we're going to make sure that we get through it a little bit easier this year than what we did last year. But we do have some tough decisions to make, as y'all seen. So please ask staff for all the information you can, and let's make sure we knock it out of the park. So with that, thanks for coming tonight, everybody. I guess we don't have, for whatever reason, we didn't have
Nothing under executive session.
any administrator updates, so, and no executive session. So nobody's got anything else, we'll call the meeting. Meeting adjourned. At 8:05. I don't have my phone. Yes, Larry.